So is it possible to save money as a digital nomad on taxes? That is exactly what we're going to go over today in this video. Welcome back to my channel, and if you're new here, I'm Christina. I'm a digital nomad. I've been living abroad for the past 5 years, currently living in Barcelona for the past year and a half, and I have the Spain Digital Nomad Visa. And so today I brought on Mike and Zeev, who are both tax experts for entrepreneurs, digital nomads, remote workers, expats, to give actual tips and advice for things you need to consider, places to go, what countries have the best programs for you, and how you can actually lower your tax if you set your companies up correctly. So this is super important information, also really useful. They have such good wealth of knowledge in this space, and I think it should really be something you consider before moving abroad. We also do touch on Spain and what the reality is of living here, building wealth here, and kind of give you an idea of what to consider before moving a place. And obviously, it's not all just about financial stuff. Lifestyle is a really big factor in these conversations. So you need to make sure before you move anywhere, you're considering what your life would look like, where you're the happiest, and then what the financial contributions or the financial gain or loss will be by living there. So these are all super important things, and I'm really excited to bring this conversation. And so I'm really excited for this video to bring you guys some more tips and some more resources to set yourself up financially and what you can do to make the process look so much easier. So let's jump right in. All right, guys, welcome back to another video on my channel. I'm really excited today because we're going to be talking all about taxes as digital nomads and how to set yourself up in the best situation possible, which is super important for financial reasons and lifestyle and what you're kind of looking for. So today on this video, I have Mike and Zeev, who are tax experts and especially in the digital nomad space. And they're going to kind of give us some information on what best steps you can take and best way to set yourself up as a remote worker to live your dream life abroad. So thanks guys for joining the video.
Very nice to be here. Thanks, Christina.
Great to be on. Thanks, Christina.
Awesome. And do you guys want to introduce yourselves and give a little information about what you guys do?
Okay. So, Zeev Fisher, I'm a tax lawyer. I'm been collecting qualifications, so qualified in the UK, Ireland, Israel, and Portugal. Living in Portugal, so sort of half a digital nomad dream, if you like, and advising expats on and digital nomads, entrepreneurs on taxation, kind of global taxation, and recently created a course for global taxation, which is forever relevant for anyone considering these things.
Hey everyone, I'm Mike Darby from the UK, just south of Cambridge, if you know the UK. Near Stansted Airport, as some of you may have flown in there. I run a company called Fresh Ops and work closely with Zeev. So Zeev and his team do the tax strategies and the consultations and get the plans together for people. My company helps implement those strategies. We do that by we can help incorporate companies. A lot of our clients like to incorporate in the US, regardless of your citizenship or tax residency. So we help incorporate the companies for them and then help manage the companies. And we'll probably go on to a little bit later as to why that's important. But getting the management away from the country that you're resident in can have great tax benefits, which we'll explain in a bit.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so I want to dive first into understanding what tax residency rules mean, because a lot of people get confused on when they're from a country, living in a certain place, when do you start to pay taxes, and what does that tax residency definition look like, and rules kind of look like as a broad sense?
Yeah, it is confusing for sure. I mean, are we talking about Americans or not Americans, or do you want to?
Well, we can start with Americans, and then we can do a little bit on Americans.
Yeah. So the idea of how tax works, kind of the basics are that you pay where you live, and tax residency is where you live. So if you're an individual and you live in a certain country and you spend all of your time there, you're a tax resident there. If you switch locations and you move between different countries, as digital nomads tend to do, then you normally have to identify the one country where your kind of your closest connections are with, and then you pay where you live. In some cases, you pay where you earn. So if you have a house, for example, in the UK and you live in Portugal or Cyprus or Panama, you still need to pay the UK government for the income from that house. And then Americans also pay in the US regardless of where they live, because the US has citizenship-based taxation. Maybe not for long now, who knows? But right now, the US, together with Eritrea, have citizenship-based taxation. So you have to account for that as well. So you could be a tax resident elsewhere and still have US tax liabilities. And much of what we do when we plan people's taxes is figure out, okay, where do you need to pay, where can you pay less, and how are the taxation rights divided between the different countries that you have a relationship with.
Yeah, for sure. And I think understanding that tax residency rule is really important, especially for digital nomads who are moving about, sometimes spend a few months in a country and sometimes move to different ones. But I know for Spain, it's like a very strict 183 days. As long as you spend that, you become a tax resident in Spain, and that's a part of the digital nomad visa here. So it definitely is worth it to understand where you're going and where you're from. Sadly, as I said, Americans, we always have to file. No matter if you've been out of the country for 10 plus years, you're still filing in the US as a citizen. So just something to consider. But then off the tail end of that, where do you guys think is the best place? Let's start with Europe for tax purposes. If someone really wanted to make the most benefits out of their situation, where are the best places for them to look? And how does that kind of look like in terms of the moving sense?
Yeah, I'll get that one as well. So Cyprus and also Malta are kind of very famous go-to destinations. If you want to be in the Schengen area, then perhaps Malta. If you're under 35, Portugal is still very, very attractive. Not everyone likes to live on an island, and Portugal tends to attract a lot of the people who care about taxes. And there are amazing benefits for people under 35 now, so very relevant for digital nomads and very new as well. So this government has just put them in place, and there will be that. It's not actually law yet, but they have the vote, so it will be law next year. This is in Europe. Outside of Europe, if you want to live in South America, Panama, Uruguay, Paraguay are quite good. In Asia, the UAE is pretty famous for being a good place for taxes. It's true from an individual perspective. Yeah, Singapore, Hong Kong. There's lots of Bali. Yeah, Bali not so much. I mean, there's lots of places you can go. It's not just one. So the question is not just where to live, but where to live considering where you're earning from. So you have to see how the country where you make money plays with the country where you want to live. This is like a very big issue. So the question is sort of back at you. How old are you? Are you American? How do you make money? And then the answer changes based on these things. There's no one answer to everyone.
Yeah, of course. And I think that's something super important to realize is that there isn't blanket information for everyone. Like everyone's tax situation is going to be different, how they earn money, where they're from. So as an American, because I know there's a lot of Americans who watch the channel, as an American wanting to live in Europe, and you're under 35, where would you suggest is kind of a best place to look at? And then I know that Portugal's rules have been changing. So what have the changes kind of look like, or what is that going to be in the future?
Yeah, Portugal is pretty amazing for under 35 now. There's just been a set of new rules creating a new tax benefit, for that age group, which, as I said, will be approved by Parliament before the end of the year, and it's already agreed with the opposition, so it's definitely happening. And the idea is that there's a tax break of about 6,000 euros, which doesn't sound like a lot, but if you're making up to approximately 50,000 euros a year, you will pay nothing in the first year, and very low tax between the second and the fifth year. If you're making up, around about 100,000, you would still be paying something like 15% from the third year onwards. and including Social Security. So that's income tax and Social Security. If you structure it moderately, but not aggressively, but right. And if you're making $500,000 or so, then you can still get amazing outcomes with good tax planning. So the fact that you have now you have this, so it's 28,000 euros of taxable income that's not being taxed in the first year and has a 75%. 75% of your total income has a break, and up to 28,000 euros. So the first 28,000 euros out of your taxable income, and the taxable income is always more. So the taxable income the overall income can be, say, 40 or 50,000, and then that gets you to 28,000, and that's not taxed at all. So if you make 40, 50, 60, you'll pay almost no tax in Portugal, which is quite an amazing benefit.
Yeah, for sure. And I do want to touch on the fact, obviously, a lot of people watch my channel. I moved to Spain, and I can easily say to you guys, Spain is not the best financial move for you. I think one of the big factors when you're moving abroad and you're, picking up your life is lifestyle. So you do want to consider lifestyle and where you want to live in conjunction with the financial situation. So obviously you don't want to move somewhere that you don't love just to pay less tax, because the reality is your overall quality of life might go down for your own happiness. So you do want to balance the two. And I kind of wanted to touch on Spain a little bit just to give an idea of what that kind of looks like, because I know there's lots of information out there that is actually not true regarding Spain Digital Nomad Visa, or makes it easier, like it's going to be easier to get these tax benefits when it really isn't. So to briefly touch on Spain, is the fact that obviously it's for employees or self-employed people or freelancers. If you are an employee from the US, you actually really can't get the visa. You need to be super careful with some people saying you can get the visa. There are certain circumstances where you could move yourself to 1099, but again, you're giving up a lot of your benefits and stuff in the US, and Social Security is really high here in Spain. I don't know if you want to touch on that, Zeev, at all for Spain stuff, but it's definitely something to consider.
Spain's very good if you're employed in Spain and your salary is very low and you have a lot of foreign income that's like dividends and stuff like that. So if you come from a rich family and you have a small job, that's the ideal scenario, because then Spain's program is called the Beckham Law, or dubbed the Beckham Law. It's meant for employees, but it exempts foreign income. So it's not really that attractive for employment income. It's only 24% plus Social Security. It's still a lot of tax. But if the majority of your income is from passive investments, but you still have a job, then you can get yourself into the Beckham Law. But you have to have the job as soon as you come. If you're the typical digital nomad, self-employed, freelancing for someone, Spain, I mean, I love Spain. I think it's a great place to be, and the lifestyle is amazing. But if you're self-employed for taxes, it's not a very good place. Not now anyway.
Yeah, and I can definitely speak on that, being someone who's self-employed here in Spain. I definitely pay a lot more than I do in the US. And one thing that I think people don't fully understand is, even if you got the 24% Beckham Law, you're taxed from $1. So you don't have that actual break anymore of your first little bit. You're taxed from $1. And most people don't even qualify for the Beckham Law. It's not every single person who qualifies. And like I said earlier, self-employed freelancers, they do not qualify for the Beckham Law. So just to put that out there for anyone who thinks they're going to move here on the 24% tax rate. And then with your Social Security contribution, obviously that's outside of your taxes that you'll pay. And if you're making the minimum, which is like 2,500 euros a month or dollars a month for the visa to apply, your Social Security is about 350 per month in addition to your taxes. So it is something to consider. And then it can go up to like 600 a month for Social Security contribution. So you're obviously going to have your high tax and you have your Social Security. You do get free healthcare if you're a Panama or self-employed. So that is something to consider if you're American, because obviously we have very expensive healthcare. But in terms of actual saving money, although the cost of living in Spain is much cheaper, if you're coming with a foreign income, especially in the US, where you're making substantially more than what the average salary is here in Spain, you will be taxed a lot. So I just wanted to kind of clear that out and put that out there before people move here thinking that they're going to have a great and low tax situation. But on the back of that, I have a question for you guys. So say you wanted to live in one country, but the tax situation isn't really good. Is there options or ways to set yourself up where your company is in one country and you're able to live part of the year somewhere else? Or is there any sort of flexibility with that? Or kind of what is your experience with that kind of situation?
Well, one of the nice things about being a digital nomad and having that flexibility of moving around is that, yeah, you can find one of these tax jurisdictions that don't tax foreign income. There's quite a few of them, and then you only pay for what you make in that country, and you travel around. This is why, partially why Cyprus is so popular, Malta is so popular, and Portugal used to be during the happy NHR days. It's fantastic for digital nomads. So it depends on the country that you choose as a tax base. You need to choose not Spain, but but then yeah, you can split your time, I mean, obviously, some people. I mean, we know of quite a few people who live in say they live in Portugal, but they actually live in Spain. Very hard to track that. We definitely don't recommend that. So, have a tax strategy that's legal and defensible. But yeah, you can have flexibility. You just need to structure it right. But you can't really be a not. I mean, it doesn't really work not to be a tax resident anywhere. And people want to achieve that outcome. It's a bad outcome. You can't open a bank account. Some companies won't pay you because you need a tax base. So people need to choose a good country for their taxes. But I think a lot of people get confused about losing tax residency as sort of a penalty. I think this is a major one. In Spain, by the way, you said that Spain is pretty clear in that it has 183 days criteria, and it's true. I mean, it's more clear than other countries, but it's actually not that clear because if you move to Spain from another country and there's double taxation treaty, you may not be a tax resident in Spain, even if you've spent more than 183 days in Spain, and you might be a tax resident in Spain even if you've spent less. Because once there is a double taxation treaty, you need to stop looking at the local legislation and you have to look at the treaty because it's a higher level legislation. So then, factors such as where is your permanent home coming to play, where is the home available to you, where are you a citizen, and so on. Yeah, it is quite complex, but you can still work the system and have quite good outcomes. Oh yeah, sorry. You asked about the company, and that sort of passes to Mike, I guess.
Yeah, I was just going to jump in a little bit on that point. A lot of our clients come to us from different jurisdictions, and they generally come through either as a digital nomad with income coming in from different streams. Maybe they're content creating, or they provide IT services. And some of them come through having an employer-employee relationship, and they're looking to move to another country and work remotely, but having that employer-employee relationship and earning kind of standard income through that income stream is doesn't allow for the same tax benefits that operating through a company can. So they may relocate to a new country, take Portugal, for example, and look at incorporating the company in a country where they're not going to be performing any of the work. Take the US, for example. They can still have clients in the US. That doesn't affect who their clientele is at all. But from changing that relationship from an employer-employee relationship to a business-to-business contracting relationship, and then taking distributions or dividends from the company, it depending on the jurisdiction that you're moving to and you're becoming a tax resident in, it can lead to good tax benefits on the income that's received as a distribution or a dividend. It can open up some issues with where the management of the company is taking place. So if you kind of are earning a significant amount of money, and the risk of an audit in whichever country you're relocating can increase naturally as you progressively make more money. And then the management taking place within that country can shift the veil, if you like, and make the authorities, the tax authorities in the country that you're now a tax resident, deem the company to be a company incorporated in that jurisdiction. Take Portugal, for example, and the US example. If you're managing the company from Portugal and you've got a US company, on paper it is perfect, and you're still taking the distributions from a US company. But should the Portuguese tax authorities dig a little deeper and they see that management is taking place in Portugal, key decisions might be taking place in Portugal, contracts might be signed from Portugal, then the veil could be lifted in that sense, and you get taxed as a Portuguese company. So then you can explore options of relocating management, and the key decisions can be taken from a third jurisdiction, and that kind of creates your optimal scenario for pulling distributions from a foreign company. So you incorporate in one jurisdiction, you a tax resident in a second jurisdiction taking the distributions, and then you have a third jurisdiction where the management and key decisions can be taken.
If I just incorporate the company somewhere and that's it. I mean, a lot of people are doing that, but it's a bit reckless. If you want to keep some of your money in a company outside the jurisdiction where you live, you need to substantiate that company, and it needs to have a little bit more than just a name and then a corporation certificate. And that's part of what Mike does. I thought.
Yeah, I think it's important to note as well, because I've talked to some people that are even American and they have their LLC in the US and they move to Spain and they bill their LLC in the US as their client to make income. But the reality is that if everything's happening within Spain, that Spain can claim that whole company income as Spanish and tax it. So this is definitely an important thing to note. And do you guys have anything to note on? I know LLCs in the US are kind of viewed differently than they are abroad. So could you give a little more information on that so people understand what that kind of looks like?
I can elaborate a bit. So yeah, LLCs, first LLCs choose their tax treatment. They can choose, some LLCs are single member LLCs, and then there's something called the pass-through entity. They're completely ignored in the US. Some LLCs are partnerships, and then the income passes to their owners. And some are treated as S corps, which is a very weird thing, which is essentially taking something that would have been otherwise self-employment income and calling it a reasonable salary that's taxed as a wage, and a remainder that's taxed as a profit, but it's not actually neither a wage nor a profit. It should have been self-employment income, but that's how the US treats it. And then there is a C corp, which is the US equivalent of a proper European company, and that's a full-on company tax, the corporation tax, and there are dividends to be paid. So there are actually 4 or 5 different types of entities here, and then each country tends to treat every one of these entities differently. In Spain, the American treatment is generally adopted, which is not good, but it makes sense. It's a sensible thing. In Portugal or in Greece, it's different. In Cyprus, for example, the American treatment is normally adopted. So you sort of have to look at these income streams and figure out what happens in the US, what happens on the other side, and how it interacts with each other. Invoicing your own LLC, for example, if you live in Spain, makes absolutely no sense. You're essentially invoicing yourself. It's because it's Spain treats the LLCs the same way that the US treats them. So if you're invoicing your own LLC, you're actually invoicing yourself. It makes 0 sense. I mean, it's fine. It works as long as it works. And then if it doesn't, it doesn't. The Spanish authorities are very aggressive. That's another thing to be said about Spain. So the likelihood of you actually being asked, what on earth have you done here? Why are you invoicing yourself? It really makes no sense at all. But you can and should report self-employment income from an LLC in Spain as self-employment income, because it's right, without invoicing yourself.
Yeah, and I think it's definitely important to note as well that, as I said, Spain's quite aggressive. So even my tax accountant here in Spain has told me to be prepared within the first 3 years to get audited. It's very common within the first 2 to 3 years to have that audit happen, and they'll go through everything with a fine-tooth comb and make sure you are doing everything correct. And obviously it's not a bad thing in terms of people not evading taxes, but it's just something to know that you're not going to have a lot of workarounds, because it's going to catch up to you in Spain if you're not smart about everything. Going off of that, I want to talk about capital gains tax, because a lot of people, when they're moving abroad, might be selling their house, or selling their assets and stuff, and then moving to, say, Portugal. And so how does that affect them if they sell prior to making that move and having the new visa there? Or does Portugal not tax the capital gains? And what should people know about selling their homes or anything of that sort?
Yeah, I mean, generally, selling assets before you move is not taxed in the country that you move to. But if you sell after you move, it normally is taxed, unless you fall into some sort of an exemption. In Portugal, there used to be a blanket exemption on this. Now it's gone. So there's something else in the pipeline that might replace it. In Spain, it's an interesting one, actually, because if you live in Spain and you sell a house and you're under Beckham, you don't pay. And if you're not under Beckham, you do pay. And in some cases, it might be worth it for you to find a small job just to get yourself under Beckham so that you won't need to pay. For that, Cyprus is pretty amazing because it doesn't have a capital gains tax at all. So you never pay.
Awesome. My other question was, when it comes to moving to, say, Cyprus or Malta, Portugal, I can touch on Spain, but is there, when they go to apply for the visa, or they're moving their companies or incorporating themselves, do they have long-term options for permanent residency, or how long are they able to kind of move over, and what's that situation look like?
Yeah, these are three countries where you can get visas pretty easily now still. I mean, I wouldn't go into all of the different options, but they tend to be quite similar. There's a passive income visa. In Malta, you need to pay a fixed fee, but it's not very high. And in Cyprus and Portugal, you can still get into the country relatively easily. I don't know how many Americans are going to move to these countries now, and for how long this is going to remain the case. There's also still a golden visa program in all of these countries. So the sort of golden visa, for those who don't know what it is, it's sort of a nickname to residency by investment type programs where you buy assets in exchange for initially a residence visa and eventually a path to citizenship or permanent residency. The most popular one by far is the Portuguese one, because it's a path to citizenship after 5 years you can apply, and after 7 years you can become a citizen. It's very fast. The real estate option has been removed, but you can invest in a fund. There's a cultural donation option, and that's kind of similar things in other countries. And the nice thing about these visas is that they don't actually force you to move. So you can spend a little time in these countries, stay where you are, and if you have the capital, so it's like hundreds of thousands of euros. It's 1 million in Malta, 500,000 in Portugal in most programs, and a bit less in Cyprus. But they're constantly raising the bar. So these programs are very popular. They're constantly raising the investment amount, but the plenty of programs offer really risk-free or very low-risk investments. So if you have 500,000 sitting around, and for example, you're not so happy about how the politics are going in the most relevant one now is the US, but also the UK is attracting a lot of frustration from a lot of people right now, and you don't want to move. You're happy where you are, but you're worried, and you're worried about yourself. You're worried about your family. Golden visa programs are fantastic for that, because you start the process. 1 or 2 years, you'll have a resident card. You have the option. At some point, you'll be a citizen. If things deteriorate, you can always move. And if you're happy to stay where you are, you can stay where you are and just visit, travel freely without the annoying Schengen checks on your visa. So it's a great investment. I mean, if you can afford it, and you have the cash, these are fantastic programs. They're expensive, but they're, especially now, I think they're worth a lot. Even if you're happy with the politics, and you can't really be happy, right? Regardless of whose side you're on, you can't really be happy.
Was there any last things you guys want to add? Any last tips? I think all this information was really, really great and super helpful for people.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of, I kind of feel that you got a lot of answers from us. And sort of, it depends, and it has to do with your personal circumstances and stuff like that. And I hope people will be receptive to that, because it really is like that. It's if you move between countries, taxes are really complicated, and there are lots of cowboys out there offering simple solutions and that are not regulated in any way and will disappear if things go wrong. But it really is complicated, but it's so important. It's like the biggest expense people have in their lifetime is taxes, and there's usually a legal way to pay less. So whilst some people find it dead boring and some others like us find it very interesting, it's extremely useful. And mentioning again that we are putting together a course that would be at a very reasonable price point. Just get started and really figure out the principles. It's super confusing, and once you figure out the principles, you can start. We do have client, and I've just worked with a client now that literally knows as much as I do. It's a pleasure. It's like, okay, self-educated, but have spent dozens of hours figuring out his personal situation. He tells me stuff that's, do you know the taxes in Estonia has just gone up? It's like, yeah, I do know that, but why do you know that? It's very good to be well educated on these things.
For sure. And I think that if you guys are really looking for education, I would highly check out their course. The link will be below in the video for you guys. And it's super important. I said it's not cookie cutter for every single person. Every person's tax situation is going to be different in terms of what you make, where you're from, your age, your assets, what you want your lifestyle to look like. So these are all important things, definitely note. But I want to thank you guys so much for joining this video and sharing your knowledge. I think it's really important for anyone who wants to move abroad, is a digital nomad entrepreneur, just to know their options and what the best route is to take. So thank you both for joining the video.
Thanks, Christina.
Thanks so much for having us, Christina.
Well, guys, that was such good information, and I hope you really found it useful. I hope you found it to be great knowledge that you learned. And if you want to learn more on taxes as a digital nomad, entrepreneur, expat, definitely check out the link below for their course, because you can learn so much. But I will say one thing to bring home on is don't forget that everyone's tax situation is different. So there is no cookie cutter information. This is just trying to provide you guys with some valuable resources and some valuable tips to make the best decision for you. And like I said in the beginning, in the intro, it's about your lifestyle and money. It's a combination of the two. So you want to make sure you're happy where you're living, both in terms of your lifestyle and financially. So they're both things to consider. So you might end up moving to somewhere like Spain where you're paying more, but you're happier. Or maybe you make a move that is more financially responsible for you, and that outweighs anything. Whatever choice it is, it has to be the right one for you. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you want to see more videos on my channel on digital nomad life, building an online business, living abroad, the realities of figuring life out in your 30s, then definitely hit the subscribe button, join this community, and I'll catch you guys next one. See ya.